constitutional amendment to establish medical freedom as a fundamental individual right in Pennsylvania. I'm joined today by several individuals who will speak briefly to the need for this amendment, numerous citizens who will support this bill, and some of our 52 co-sponsors here in the House of Representatives. Constitutional amendments should never be taken lightly, and amendments to Article 1, our Declaration of Rights, should be taken even more seriously than others, because those declared rights are the center of the entire legal universe around which the rest of our laws revolve. Behind every individual right declared within Article 1 is a history of inequities and abuses imposed by prior governments or societal norms, which allowed for policies and practices that were harmful to individuals simply because there was no law in place to prohibit them. The rights to trial by jury, freedom of speech, freedom to worship, and the right to not be discriminated against due to one's sex or race all became part of our Declaration of Rights because those who put them there lived through a time when those rights were not protected. Each of them represented a unique turning point for the betterment of a free society. We find ourselves at an equally seminal moment in time relative to the concept of medical freedom, as what were once benign policies and practices on matters of public health have become, especially over the last 2 years, increasingly opaque, obtuse, intrusive, and damaging to the very personal and private medical decisions of the citizens of this Commonwealth. This constitutional amendment, if ratified by the voters, would bring precise points of clarity to two very murky questions. Number one, are individuals free to just say no to medical treatments, procedures, injections, vaccines, and prophylactics? And number two, should discrimination based on such very personal and private decisions be prohibited? I would say the answer to both questions is yes. The people of Pennsylvania deserve a firm constitutional protection of their right to medical freedom, both from government mandates and from the whims of corporations and other entities which can only exist or operate due thanks to government-issued charters, licenses, or grants of privilege. Saying no should not relegate anyone to second-class citizenship, nor should it cost them their livelihood or career. And let me be perfectly clear. House Bill 2013 is not about the efficacy of any available medical procedure, treatment, injection, vaccine, or prophylactic. It would not prohibit anyone from requesting, encouraging, or even incentivizing others to participate in any medical procedure, treatment, injection, vaccine, or prophylactic. House Bill 2013 is simply about protecting the right of every Pennsylvanian to make their own personal medical decisions and preventing discrimination based on those decisions. As with all constitutional amendments, we here in the General Assembly cannot and will not have the final word on this matter. Ultimately, it will be up to the people of this great Commonwealth to decide whether medical freedom should be declared as a fundamental individual right under Article 1. Could you bring these forward, please? Right up here. Everyone's familiar with the Great Seal of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, but few are familiar with the reverse side, or the counter seal, which pictures Lady Liberty dominating tyranny in the form of a lion, along with the warning across the top, both can't survive. On medical freedom, the citizens and legislators before you proudly stand with Lady Liberty and ask you to join us in doing the same. Thank you very much. Thanks to the efforts of Chairwoman Kathy Rapp, House Bill 2013 has already been advanced out of the House Health Committee. We gather united here today, publicly requesting that House leadership recognize this seminal moment in time and rise to the occasion by putting House Bill 2013 on the voting calendar. It's time we put medical freedom on the ballot and let the people decide. We have a number of speakers here. Our first speaker will be Dr. Shamini Wheeler, DO. Dr. Wheeler, please come forward.
What a privilege it is to be united here together as Pennsylvanians for medical freedom. We are only here because we are a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Well, as a physician, I want to talk to you a little bit about medicine. Medicine, at its core, is a moral enterprise that's grounded in the covenant of trust. It is because of this covenant of trust that our patients choose to follow us. It's only the duty of a physician to give advice and counsel, but it is their choice to follow us or not. These last 2 years have given us, just shown us how mandates have taken and replaced personal choice for one's own body autonomy. I was a pediatric hospitalist and a pediatric emergency medicine physician for 18 years. I absolutely loved my job. I would often welcome residents and medical students into the newborn nursery with the statement, "Welcome to the land of unicorns and rainbows," because I absolutely was so eager to teach them how to be the best doctor possible. Well, what I absolutely loved was taken from me by St. Luke's Hospital when I aired on 69 News. On 69 News, I said that I was against the mandate. Only 3 hours later, I was told by my leadership at the hospital never to come back on their premise because I said I was against a vaccine mandate. My medical license was actually investigated for going on the news against saying that. And then later, I was fired from Children's Hospital of Philadelphia for not taking the COVID-19 vaccine. Interestingly, I have a medical condition that I cannot take the influenza vaccine for, and I have exemptions from all the hospitals that I worked at because I cannot take that. Given the pathophysiology of the influenza virus and the SARS virus that causes COVID-19 is very similar, it is absolutely illogical that CHOP would not extend the same courtesy to me that they gave me for the influenza vaccine. So all of us are here, we all have our individual personal stories about how our liberties, our constitutional rights have been violated during these pandemics. That's my story, but we can't stay consumed in our stories, but we must look forward to unite and rebuild our broken, polarized nation. Trust is the easiest thing in the world to lose, and it's the hardest thing in the world to get back. Because our body autonomy is an individual liberty that must be guarded, we must unite as the people of the Commonwealth so that we can regain the trust back in medicine. This is why we need this constitutional amendment, the right to medical freedom, to protect us from government overreach, imposing mandates that repeatedly violate our God-given right to body autonomy. Let us unite as the citizens of the Commonwealth and support House Bill 2013, which will amend the Pennsylvania Constitution to prevent discrimination for exercising one's individual right to medical freedom. If we want to live in the land of the free, we must first be brave enough to stand up. We have to be the home of the brave first. Dr. Ben Carson once said that. We can't stay in the sidelines and think that somebody else will do it. We have to join the fight. Each one of us need to talk to your legislatures, your representatives, anybody in your sphere of influence to do this. So let's unite for medical freedom to put House Bill 2013, the right to medical freedom, on the ballot so that the citizens of Pennsylvania can make their choice. Thank you.
Next up, we have Diane Soucy, who is the founder and CEO of the Activities for Daily Living Center. Diane?
Thank you, Russ. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm truly honored to be a part of this press conference. Today, I'm going to speak to you a little bit about a very unheard of sort of situation in regards to who really was affected by these mandates and why this House bill is so important. We've all heard the stories of our senior citizens and the isolation that they went through during this epidemic. The same is true for individuals with disabilities. What not many people understand is that a lot of our individuals with disabilities, including young children, are placed into senior assisted living centers. These centers were sealed off from the public. These individuals, young children even, were separated from their families because of these mandates. These hospital policies, these health system policies affected our youth with disabilities in the same exact way that they affected our seniors. This House bill will prevent that from happening again. I'm here to be the voice for those who cannot speak for themselves. Those people who live in these communities had no options. It was take it or lose your home. Mothers were not able to see their children for up to 16 months and more, exactly the way our seniors were isolated, those with disabilities and challenges were isolated. House Bill 2013 will make that so that it never happens again, that the people who have been chosen to advocate for those who cannot advocate for themselves have the ability to do that. Our bodies are sovereign. Our children belong to us. This puts that responsibility, that awesome responsibility, back in the hands of the people who care about these individuals. It makes it so these things can never happen again. I urge you to please speak to your representatives, speak to your senators, speak to your boss, speak to everyone about the importance of this bill. This bill protects us, our loved ones, and our future. I'm in full support of House Bill 2013, and I urge you, please, get this on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Diane. Next up, I'd like to play you a short video clip from Mary Holland, who is the President and General Counsel of the Children's Health Defense.
As a member of Pennsylvania Coalition for Informed Consent, I have often presented statistics, legislative movement updates, and general medical freedom concerns. Today, I offer you something different, a story that can't be told by the writer, not because she doesn't want to be here, but because she isn't able to travel anymore. It was August 5th, 2021, and like most people, Aaliyah was told that getting the COVID shot would protect her parents. She didn't want the shot, but everyone around her was pushing her to do it, if not for herself, for her family. And everyone followed the propaganda script perfectly, finally putting her over the edge to get it. The first shot went as expected, a small fever, a little achy. So Aaliyah lined up for her next shot on August 26th. She immediately became sick, pins and needles being felt throughout her body. And that evening, her right arm swelled up, becoming hot and red. She went to urgent care. The doctor called it COVID arm. As the evening continued on, pain started and it got worse. You see, prior to this shot, this single mother was able to provide a good living for her and her 5.5-year-old little girl, working up to 40 hours a week. Halloween 2021 came around, and she develops a sinus infection, bronchitis, and an unknown neurological condition. Aaliyah became extremely fatigued, started getting dizzy, and began not to be able to stand up. She calls them storms. They come and go, but prevent her from driving, from traveling. This past Easter, she spent it in the dark. She was an involved mom, picking up her child from preschool, chasing after her child in the park, walking around the neighborhood. Now she is bound to her house many times and just in bed. Her doctors agree that it's a vaccine reaction, but like so many, wouldn't report it to the VAERS system because it would take too much of their time. She learned from her doctor that the shot awakens old viruses in the system. As she lost reflexes in the knees, developed brain fog, memory issues, and neuropathy, just to name a few, she went on more and more medications to try and manage it. Only able to work 10 to 15 hours a week, her income has lessened. Now she has to choose between medication or preschool for her daughter. On the months that she can't afford all of her medications, she pays $1,450 just to make it through her day-to-day life. That's with insurance. All of this to protect her parents. But I ask you, who is protecting her? This is why we need to have freedom to choose whether or not we want a medical procedure, a treatment, an injection, a vaccine, or a prophylactic without interference, without coercion. This is why we need House Bill 2013. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Next, we will hear from Pastor Jody Reese, who's a pastor at Nittany Baptist Church in State College, Pennsylvania. Jody.
As Russ said, my name is Jody Reese. My son-in-law's name was Jeremy Peck. He died on January 19th due to the clear and heinous mistreatment in our local hospital. He and our daughter could not have children, so they were excited to adopt the 4 that I have pictured here. So after Jeremy died, he left 4 young children, and yesterday would have been Jeremy's 40th birthday. He went to our local emergency room for COVID pneumonia but was not treated. He was told only to go home and come back if his condition worsened. It did. And so a day later, he was admitted, and he was given against his will remdesivir and then baricitinib once the hospital realized the error of giving him remdesivir without his permission. His decline led him to ask to be discharged and go to an out-of-state clinic a day later for his COVID and now double pneumonia. The head nurse at the clinic writes of our hospital and reveals the difference before Jeremy received these drugs and after. She wrote, "Their fatal error showing the medicine's outcomes on his life was the baseline blood draw. His labs and organ function were flawless. But by that evening, though, the kidney had taken a hit. By the next morning, his liver was inflamed. By the time we drew baseline labs at our clinic, I asked the question no one wanted to hear. Are you sure they didn't give you remdesivir?" She finally writes, "He looked like a patient who'd been given an immunosuppressant on his lab presentation." I was with Jeremy when he was asked this question, and he told the nurse, "No, I refused remdesivir." And she responded that they were seeing many in their clinic who had come from hospitals with the same evidence of damage from this toxic drug. Studies have shown 46% of people receiving it have died. Jeremy passed within 9 days of receiving it in the prime of his life and in good health prior, with a promising career and a wonderful, loving family. God will have his justice, but we intend to do what he allows to bring it about. And one of the means is this bill. We intend to bring that about for Jeremy and his family, his children, and many others, both old and young.
Thank you so much, Jody. I know how tough that was for you. Our next speaker will be Diana Campbell, who is the founder of the Health Freedom Pennsylvania. Diane.
Hello, my name is Diana Campbell, and I am the founder of Health Freedom Pennsylvania. I have been advocating for medical rights and transparencies for years after my daughter experienced adverse reactions to vaccines. This work has allowed me to travel and meet many people. One of those people is a registered nurse named Jennifer, who worked in the same nursing facility for 19 years in Mercer County. Jennifer told me that the day all the residents received their first COVID jab, 4 of them never woke up the next morning. Unfortunately, Jennifer was not aware of a vaccine warning system known as VAERS. The system set up by our own CDC failed Jennifer and those 4 families. VAERS stands for Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System and is co-managed by the CDC and FDA. Healthcare providers are required by law to report all deaths following vaccination to VAERS. As of now, there have been roughly 1.2 million reports made to VAERS regarding the COVID jab. This includes over 27,000 deaths. This number is more than all other reported adverse events for other vaccines combined. VAERS is widely acknowledged, even by the CDC, to be vastly underreported. It is important and necessary that we spread the message of the VAERS program and its purpose. A Harvard Pilgrim study funded by the CDC found that fewer than 1% of vaccine adverse events noted in medical records were actually ever reported to VAERS. That means 99% of adverse events post-vaccination are never reported. If this is the best that the CDC can do, and if they can't give this system accurate, then what else is the CDC getting wrong? While this argument will be made that the VAERS system can be unreliable, it is imperative to remember that the VAERS is the CDC's own reporting system. Without proper transparency, other related issues will be negatively affected, such as balancing our budget due to mandated medical products with no liability, which can hurt, disable, and possibly kill people. Who is going to pay for the damage that is happening to people if the vaccine manufacturers aren't responsible for their products? Will it be us, the Pennsylvania taxpayers? I can tell you that vaccine manufacturers, doctors, nurses, pharmacists, hospitals, insurance companies, and employers are not liable for damages, and neither are these governing bodies that are mandating them. It should always be our right to make our own medical decisions without coercion, discrimination, threats of being denied employment, entertainment, or education. Medical freedom is a bipartisan issue. It transcends every other divisive issue that we are facing in Pennsylvania. This is why we need to come together and support House Bill 2013. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Next, we're going to view a short video from Dr. Peter McCullough, who's a cardiologist and the Chief Medical Advisor for the Truth for Health Foundation.
Thank you, Representative Diamond, for inviting me to come and speak today. I want to speak about what happens on another one of these aspects when parents do not have the freedom to make medical decisions for their minor children. Because when parents lose that freedom, do you know who will be making those decisions? Unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats in the government. 99 years ago, in the U.S. Supreme Court case of Meyer versus Nebraska, the U.S. Supreme Court first recognized the fundamental right of parents, the highest right in our constitutional system. The Supreme Court reiterated this in 1925 in the case of Pierce versus Society of Sisters, again in 1972 in the case of Wisconsin versus Yoder, and as recently as 2000 in the Supreme Court case of Troxel versus Granville, when the U.S. Supreme Court stated, quote, "The liberty interest at issue in this case, the interest of parents in the care, custody, and control of their children, is perhaps the oldest of the fundamental liberty interests recognized by this court," end quote. That's why parents, in consultation with their doctors, should decide whether to give their children all of their vaccines, some of the CDC schedule, or even if they choose not to do any in consultation with their pediatrician. That is their fundamental right as parents. Now, as Representative Diamond said, I'm also the president of our charitable arm, the Parental Rights Foundation, which does education and litigation work. And I'm pleased to report that when the District of Columbia passed their Minor Consent Act in 2020, this was an act that would allow children as young as 11 to consent to vaccinations. This act also cut parents out of the process and even being told afterwards of the fact. The Parental Rights Foundation partnered with our friends at the Children's Health Defense and others, and we filed suit in federal district court. And just last month, a federal district judge agreed with us and issued a preliminary injunction against D.C.'s Minor Consent Act. This is a nationwide fight. I'm grateful to be here with all of you today because the best way to protect children is to empower parents. Thank you, Representative Diamond.
Our final live speaker today will be Ellie Campbell. Ellie is a second grade homeschool student. Ellie, the microphone is yours. Go ahead, I'll hold it.
Hello, my name is Ellie Campbell. I'm a second grade homeschool student. I'm here today representing the next generation of Pennsylvania citizens. My opportunities in life should never be limited because of any medical procedure. All children are different, unique, and special. I deserve to be treated equal no matter what medical product I have taken or not taken. I may be only 8 years old, but I know my parents make good decisions for me. I am happy and healthy. I am here today to ask you to support House Bill 2013, Right to Medical Freedom, for me and my future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. And finally, folks, we have a video from Dr. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is the author of the best-selling book, The Real Anthony Fauci.
Hey, everybody, I'm so proud of what you're doing in Harrisburg. Every American should be offended and outraged by the way that the government technocrats and the big shots from Silicon Valley have used this health crisis as a pretense for clamping down totalitarian controls. Instead of a public health response, we got to police a militarized and monetized response. We now need to begin to erect legal barriers that will protect our democracy, that will protect our freedoms, that will protect our country and our children from this rising tide of totalitarianism. And that battle is beginning in Harrisburg. Thank you for everything that you're doing to make it happen.
Thank you. That concludes our presentation.